When my parents divorced, I thought the world had split open beneath my feet. At 12 years old, I didn't fully understand what divorce meant beyond the sudden end of everything that felt familiar. There were no big fights in front of me, no screaming matches or slamming doors. It just ended. One day, they sat me and my sister down and said they couldn't stay married anymore. They tried to explain it in a way that wouldn't scare us. But no matter how much they sugarcoated it, I could feel the ground shifting. For me, the real shock wasn't the divorce itself. It was what happened after. You see, when parents split, there's this natural assumption that both will want to keep their kids close. I had heard from my friends that custody battles were fierce, with parents fighting tooth and nail to spend more time with their children. But that wasn't my experience. My dad didn't fight. He didn't even try. He let my mom take custody of me without so much as a second glance. But when it came to my sister, things were different. She was the golden child, the one he couldn't seem to let go of. While I was handed off without hesitation, he made sure to secure time with her. It was as though, in his mind, he had to choose, and I wasn't worth choosing. Part 1. Becoming invisible. In the months following the divorce, my dad's absence became a constant weight on my chest. I would hear stories from other kids at school about their parents fighting over who got to take them to soccer practice or who would get them for the holidays. I would lie in bed at night, wondering why my dad hadn't fought for me, why he hadn't even asked. It was like I had been erased from his life. My mom tried to reassure me. She would say things like, "Your dad just needs space right now, or he'll come around." But I knew the truth. Even if she couldn't admit it, he didn't want space. He just didn't want me. He never said those words directly. Of course, he didn't have to. His actions were louder than anything he could have said. He would pick up my sister for their weekends together, leaving me behind without so much as a goodbye. He didn't offer to take me with them. He didn't ask how I was doing. It was as though I had become invisible, an afterthought in his new life. My sister, of course, didn't notice. She was too wrapped up in being Dad's favorite. She would come home after spending time with him, bursting with stories about all the fun things they did together. She never asked why I wasn't invited, why Dad didn't make time for me. It never crossed her mind. She was his golden girl, the one he couldn't get enough of. And me? I was just a leftover child, the one no one wanted. Part 2. The golden child. I'm not sure when it started. This obsession Dad had with my sister. Maybe it had always been there, simmering beneath the surface. Or maybe it started when we were younger, back when everything in our family still felt normal. I didn't notice it at first, but as time passed, it became impossible to ignore. She was everything he wanted in a daughter. Beautiful, outgoing, talented. She was the star athlete, the honor roll student, the social butterfly who made friends wherever she went. Dad basked in her success, bragging about her accomplishments to anyone who would listen. Every time she won a trophy or got a perfect score on a test, he was there, beaming with pride. And then there was me. I wasn't athletic. I wasn't the top student. I wasn't popular. I was quiet, introverted, and spent most of my time with my nose buried in a book. Dad didn't understand me, and because of that, he didn't care. In his eyes, I was a disappointment, someone who wasn't worth his time or attention. He didn't come to my school events. He didn't ask about my hobbies or what I liked. He just didn't care. It wasn't like I hadn't tried. I spent years trying to get his attention, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he would see me. I joined extracurricular activities, tried to get better grades, even attempted to take up sports like my sister. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. He would always smile and nod, offering a half-hearted good job, but his eyes were always on her. It hurt, more than I could put into words. I tried to hide it, to bury the pain deep inside where no one could see it. But it festered, growing like a thorn in my heart. No matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it was always there, this gnawing feeling that I would never be enough for him. Part 3. The split. My dad's life after the divorce seemed to flourish. He moved into a new apartment in a nicer part of town, the kind of place that screamed freedom and bachelorhood. He started dating again, parading different women in and out of his life like they were accessories, all while doting on my sister, They would go on trips together, just the two of them. I would watch them pack up the car, my sister's excitement palpable, while I stood on the porch, invisible. "Dad needs a break," my mom would say, trying to explain his absence. But I couldn't wrap my head around it. A break? From what? Being a father? It was as though I had become this burden he was eager to discard. A reminder of the responsibilities he didn't want anymore. I was the inconvenience, the child who didn't fit into his new, shiny life. Meanwhile, my sister thrived in her role as the golden child. She would come home from weekends with Dad, her face flushed with happiness, recounting all the adventures they had. I would sit there, nodding along, pretending like it didn't hurt to hear about the life I wasn't a part of. But it did hurt, every single time. Part 4. The growing distance. As the years went on, the distance between my dad and me grew wider. Like a chasm I could never hope to cross. He still saw my sister regularly, taking her to movies, sporting events, and even on vacations. But me? I was left behind. It wasn't just the physical distance that hurt. It was the emotional one. I had lost more than just a father. I had lost the idea of what a father should be. He was supposed to be the one who protected me, who loved me unconditionally. But instead, he was the one who had abandoned me. Not in the literal sense, but in every way that mattered. I would occasionally get a call from him, but it always felt obligatory, like he was checking a box. His questions were brief, his interest minimal. He never asked about my life, my dreams, my struggles. He didn't know me, and I don't think he wanted to. I began to withdraw, not just from him, but from everyone. It was easier that way. If I didn't let anyone in, they couldn't hurt me. I threw myself into my studies, hoping that maybe, one day, I could prove to him that I was worth something. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. He didn't care. Part 5. The pain of being forgotten. There's something uniquely painful about being forgotten by someone who is supposed to love you. It's a slow, agonizing realization that you don't matter, that you never did. I watched as my dad build a new life without me in it, while I remained stuck, waiting for a recognition that would never come. I would see him occasionally at family events, holidays, birthdays, the rare gathering where both my parents were forced to be in the same room. He would greet me with a smile, a pat on the back, but it was empty, hollow. I wasn't his daughter in those moments. I was just a guest, someone he barely knew. My sister, on the other hand, was always at the center of his attention. He would wrap his arm around her, proudly boasting about her latest achievements, while I stood in the background, unnoticed. I had grown used to it by then, but that didn't make it hurt any less. It was during one of those family events that the final piece of the puzzle fell into place for me. I overheard my dad talking to a relative, casually mentioning how he needed a break after the divorce, how he had been overwhelmed by everything, how he couldn't handle being a full-time parent to two kids. Two kids. That's when it hit me. He hadn't needed a break from parenting. He had needed a break from me. My sister was the one he wanted to keep close, the one who fit into his life. I was the one he had left behind because I didn't fit. I wasn't what he wanted. Part 6. Moving on. After that day, something shifted in me. I stopped caring about my dad's approval. I stopped waiting for him to come around, to realize that he had made a mistake. I wasn't going to be his afterthought any longer. I focused on myself. I worked hard, graduated with honors, and got into a good college. I built a life for myself that didn't revolve around seeking validation from someone who would never give it. It wasn't easy, and the scars of my dad's neglect will probably always be there. But I learned to live with them. My relationship with my dad now is distant. At best, he still has a close bond with my sister. And that's fine. She can have him. I don't need him anymore. Conclusion. The child left behind. Looking back on it all, I realized that my dad's failure wasn't just about choosing my sister over me. It was about failing to see me as a person, as someone worthy of love and attention. He saw what he wanted in my sister. Perfection, success, a reflection of himself. And he didn't see any of that in me. And for a long time, that broke me. But now, I see it differently. His inability to see my worth doesn't define me. It never did. I am more than the child he left behind. I am more than his failure to love me. I have built a life that he will never be a part of. And that's okay. I don't need him anymore. I've moved on. I found my own way. And in the end, that's what matters.